All right. So a lot of times I get the question of, can I really do this? So when we think about how legal services have been delivered for the past umpteen years before I was even born, we're accustomed to having a lawyer, and the lawyer tells you what you should, can, cannot, or should do. So the lawyer drives the process. So when we look at immigration services, and we look at the changes, there's so many changes that's happening with the law. Then we look at individuals, there are these different individuals that can deliver those services. When we think about the number of immigrants in the United States, or the number of undocumented immigrants, there are numbers that reach up to 13 million. There's not enough lawyers to help all these individuals. And so when we look at how do we get information, how do we get knowledge into the hands of these undocumented individuals, the only natural pathway is to look at individuals that are not lawyers. And the questions I get asked a lot is, can I really do this? My answer to you is yes, you can do this. Legal services will be delivered by individuals that are not licensed attorneys, that have not passed the bar exam. Why? Because the states have said it, states like Utah, states like Arizona, they have defined what non-attorneys can do. And then when we look at accredited representatives, the Department of Justice have taken it a step further and say, look, if you're able to complete comprehensive knowledge in immigration law, so you take some kind of course, some kind of education in immigration law, not in real estate law, not in tax law, not in sitting at the kitchen table and doing your family's paperwork law, but comprehensive knowledge of of immigration law, then you can apply for this pathway. What is a pathway called? It's called the Accredited Representative Program. Through that program, you can either become a partial representative or you can become a full representative. In this pathway, you may align yourself with an attorney like myself. You may attend some kind of training program, and then you submit the application, and it shows you get to show everything that you've learned. And then you become that beacon of hope for family members. Remember, not everybody can afford an attorney, but they may be able to come to you for some knowledge, for some education, for some guidance. And then you don't have to hide in the corner and say, can I really do this? Because yes, you can do this. And not only are you doing this, but you're also doing it with compliance. You're complying with the law. You're doing it ethically. I like to say in the Immigration Law Academy that the business you're building, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, but it's not a duck. So everything you're doing mimics what attorneys are doing, but you're just not owning a law firm. You're owning an immigration business. And I guarantee you that is going to be the change between someone getting deported, or someone submitting the wrong application, or someone not getting the right information. You're going to be that change. And that is why I'm so adamant about legal rebels, individuals like yourself that haven't gone to law school. You haven't spent the $200,000 to attend law school, but you've done the proper training. You've looked to your state bar rules and you've looked to see the ethics of it all. Is it ethical? You've looked to make sure you're in compliance. You've looked to make sure you have agreements, written agreements between yourself and the individual you're offering services to. And it's the change. It's how legal services are being delivered. I want to talk about the clear breakdown of the steps to become an accredited representative. First of all, I want you to either be a citizen or a green card holder. So that's step one. I want a very clear breakdown. I want you to either be a citizen or a lawful permanent resident. Why? Because there's going to be a background check. You can do it a number of ways. You can do it where you're working with a nonprofit and the nonprofit submits the application on your behalf and an attorney signs it. Or you can have your own nonprofit and you submit the application on your behalf and you have an attorney sign it. So either it's your nonprofit or it's a nonprofit that you're working with. For example, in Florida, we have CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations, and that's a nonprofit that can submit that on your behalf. But it is an application process. It is a timely application, meaning you have to put a lot of things together. Number one, you have to show where you've gotten that comprehensive knowledge of US immigration law. Did you attend a training program? Did you attend a couple AILA conferences? Did you attend WILA, our academy, where we offer comprehensive training on immigration law? We want to show these things in your application. We also want letters from your mentors or mentees or attorneys that you've worked with. So it's not just, let me fill this out and say I've attended class. We want letters from not family members. We want it from your mentors, licensed attorneys. Probably if you've worked in a law firm, we would love a letter from the representative. Or in the case of Willa, I would write you a letter of support because I've seen your training. I've seen where you've attended class in our 90 days. You've attended, you've completed the work, you've completed the educational videos, you've shadowed me in court. So all of these things, and you also get to put a log together because you have to show the things that you've done. And not only that, you have to have someone look over this application for you. So for example, in the academy, we help you put your application together, and then we sit with you. We go over all the pieces of the application, comprehensive knowledge of immigration law, make sure your background is good, because guess what? They are going to run your fingerprints. So that's like a step by step. Once that application is ready, and I'll tell you what the application forms are. You can look it up online. It's the EOIR 31 and the EOIR 31A. Go figure, all these forms have names. Once we get this packet together with your letters of support, your log, your case log, if you're handling any kind of cases under an attorney's supervision, your court log, if you've attended court. Once we get this nice package together, we submit this application. Your application can be submitted by email. We can email it off to the representatives. They will do a general sweep of the application to make sure it complies. That's step one. So you send it off. General sweep. They look to make sure everything is intact. And if it needs some more information, they'll send it back to you and say, please sign here. You didn't sign here, or you're missing a letter, or your case log is incorrect. We've had that where they've sent it back and say, fix this case log. Once they've done that, then the application is now good, and they'll get an email to say your application have been accepted. So we're talking about becoming an accredited representative, can be partial or full. Full means you can go into court, you can go into USCIS. Partial, you can only do the administrative side of immigration. So depending on where your training lies, you get to select full or partial. So once they have this application, you'll get an email that says your application is now admitted or accepted. And then it's the waiting game. Like all things immigration, it's the waiting game. I know we just submitted a bunch of applications, and I know they're processing up to June or July of 2025. So there is a little waiting game. They may come back and ask for more information, or you may get a letter saying that you are now good for conditional. So they'll accept you conditionally because it's the first time. And that conditional acceptance will last for 3 years. So for 3 years, you're now a partial accredited representative, or you're a full accredited representative. And so you continue to go under the compliance, under the guidance, means you continue to align yourself with an attorney. You continue to take educational courses. That way you're always up to date on what's going on in immigration law. And you can go to court if you're full. You can go into USCIS with your clients. How amazing is that? You get to represent at a whole other level. Now you're not hiding in the shadows trying to figure out what to do. Now you're front and center, changing the lives of individuals who, before they met you, could probably, more than likely, not afford an attorney. So those are the clear steps in becoming an accredited representative. So I get this a lot. I'm not a lawyer. Am I qualified? Okay, first of all, lawyers do not qualify to become accredited representatives. I'll repeat that. If you are an attorney, You cannot become an accredited representative. Lawyers and accredited representatives are two different things. Lawyers, you've gone to law school, you've taken the bar, you have a license. Accredited representatives, you have not gone to law school. You may have a bachelor's degree, you may have a master's, not required. You may have an associate, not required. You're not required to have a degree. What is required? Comprehensive knowledge of US immigration law, completing that application, aligning yourself with a licensed attorney, and then you submit your application. So no, you do not have to be a lawyer in order to become a DOJ accredited representative. Why community-based immigration support matters more now than ever. We are at a point in history where there is a war on immigrants. There is a war on immigrants. If you're my age, you've probably gone through the war on drugs. You've gone through different wars. Right now, under this current administration, if you're watching this video in the future, it is 2026 and there's a war on immigrants. And so now more than ever, the law changes or policies, immigration policies changes daily. Meaning we could go to bed tonight, wake up tomorrow morning, and there's a 75 country ban. We could go to bed tonight, wake up tomorrow morning, and TPS has ended for Haiti, which is not the case. But we could go to bed tonight, wake up tomorrow morning, TPS has ended for Nepal. So it's constant chaos in the US immigration space. When we have individuals like yourselves, you're not a lawyer, but you're a community advocate. You're not a lawyer, but you're community support. You're not a lawyer, but you care passionately about your community. You care about immigrants. When we have somebody like you that's aligned with a system, or you're aligned with an attorney, whether it's myself or another licensed attorney, you become the go-to in your community, right? If that neighbor gets the letter and they don't understand the letter, they don't have access to an attorney, oftentimes what we see happening is they decide, I'm not going to court. I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to my ICE check-in. But what if you now become an accredited representative and you start to understand the system? You have access to an attorney and you say, you know what? I will go with you for your ICE check-in. I will go with you to that first court hearing in Orlando where I tell you how to dress, how to walk in, how to approach the judge. I will help you mail that application because now I'm trained. I will understand where to mail this application to. So this is community advocacy at its finest. And guess what? It's not costing our family members that high legal bill. But now you're not also driving them in the wrong direction. So there are many reasons why a program like this works and works well for the community. Becoming an accredited representative, I think it's a rite of passage. I think it's a rite of passage for every community advocate because now you're educated, now you're aligned, now you can serve. At its core, even every document preparer, even the document preparers that I have seen that have made mistakes on documents, most of them, it was not intentional. They just did not have the right information. So imagine if you're properly trained, you have the right information, you have the right access, now you can serve your community. It's a win-win. It's community advocacy at its finest. Let's talk about accreditation. What does accreditation really mean and what it doesn't mean? If you're not an accredited representative, it means we don't know who you are. Becoming an accredited representative, it means that the service, the department has looked into your background and see that you haven't committed any crimes. It means the service has looked into your background and see that you're fit. It means that you'll get recognition from the judge. You'll get recognition from the officer. You'll get recognition from attorneys because you've put the time in. You've leveled up. You understand the law. You've taken the time out to understand the law. You're not just sitting in the back of a mechanic shop and filling out these forms and causing more problems for individuals than it's worth. What we have seen is that we have a family member who probably filled out an I-130 for themselves. All of a sudden, now they're calling themselves document preparers. That's what we see, the trend. They have no training. They're giving wrong advice. They're giving bad advice. So when you become an accredited representative, the scope of what you can do broadens. You can now give advice to individuals. Why? You're trained. You can now represent individuals. If you're partial, you can go with them to USCIS. Yes, you walk into the building, you sit across from the officer, and you advocate on behalf of that person. You might even have filled out the paperwork or the application. You would have signed your name on the form G28. Yes, the same form that attorneys sign, you will sign it. The scope becomes more powerful. As an accredited representative, you don't have to be in the shadows. You can run that business that walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, but it's not a duck, right? We can't call it a law firm, but we might as well call it the same. So that is a powerful, powerful move on your behalf, especially when you believe in community advocacy and it separates you from your peers. All your peers that are document preparers, it separates you from them. The biggest mistakes most consultants make is they are practicing law without a law license. That's what I see. And they don't even realize that they're practicing law. They don't even realize that they're engaging in the unauthorized practice of law. They're giving advice. They're giving legal advice. They are filling out documents and sending it to court when they shouldn't be doing that. They are telling you what option to choose. They cannot do that. So aspiring consultants, you cannot do that. As an accredited representative, yes, you can do that. So my biggest advice to my aspiring document preparers, my aspiring consultants, know your limit. I always say to individuals in the academy, whenever you're sitting across from someone, they should know right away that you're not a lawyer. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want anyone to walk away from you and say, oh my God, I just met with the best lawyer ever, when in fact you are a consultant. They should understand the difference between working with a lawyer and not working with a lawyer. They should know the difference. They should know, you know what? I met with Dionnie. She is a lawyer. I met with my consultant. She's not a lawyer, but she has access to a lawyer. She can ask the lawyer some questions. So one of the biggest mistakes I see aspiring consultants do is out there just giving advice, especially in the age of social media. We get carried away. Because remember, we went as an aspiring consultant, you've gone through the process. So you know the process. You know what forms to fill out. You know what advice to give. You know when to turn left and when to turn right. As a consultant, and you're not an accredited representative or you're not a licensed attorney, you cannot give legal advice. So my advice to you is be very, very, very careful. Another mistake that I see aspiring consultants do, they're not in compliance. They don't know what the state bar says they can and cannot do. Every state bar, even though immigration is federal, every state bar has limitations on what even I as an attorney can do and I cannot do. So aspiring consultants, another mistake that I see you do, you don't know what is compliance and what is not compliance. You're just out there doing it. So keep in mind, make sure you pay attention to what the state bar says you can and cannot do. Another big mistake that my aspiring consultants or my document preparers make is they're not aligned with a licensed attorney. They're not aligned. They don't have a licensed attorney in their pocket that they can call when the client gets that request for evidence or the client gets that notice to appear. The best thing you can do for that client is like, hold up, don't move. Let me call a lawyer for you. I'll be on the phone with the lawyer with you. I just want to explain what's happening. That's a big mistake. Instead, what I see aspiring consultants do, or my document preparers, they try to solve the problem themselves because they feel like they've done something wrong. You know what? This is my fault. I messed this up. Let me fix it. No, 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 no. We are in like immigration crackdown season. Even I am getting requests for evidence. Even my packages are getting rejected. So we're in a season where a lot of that is happening. So I would encourage you to please, please, please align yourself with a licensed attorney. Go introduce yourself Invite the attorney for coffee and say, look, I'm a document preparer. I know my limitations. I do want to stay in compliance. However, can you be on call for me? Can you be on call for me? Just in case. Can I refer these technical cases to you because it's out of my realm. It's out of my pay grade, right? So that's another big mistake that I see aspiring consultants make. Why do we focus on ethics first? So one of the things we do in the Wynter Immigration Law Academy is we focus on ethics first. We want to protect the immigrants from harm. We want to protect you, the representative, and it's a value in action. So let's talk about protecting the clients. All right. What is ethics? Ethics is doing the right thing when no one is looking. And you must understand your ethical responsibilities. For example, I see this a lot. I'm representing a couple, they're married. So I'm representing the couple through an adjustment of status. Walk with me here. The couple then decides to get a divorce, right? Remember, both of them, you're representing them. She's telling you all the things. He's telling you all the things. Now, in the middle of the immigration process, the marriage catches a fire. It's ablaze, and they've decided to separate. Ethically, you cannot represent either of them in a VAWA claim. You need to send them out to go have somebody else represent them. And that's what I mean about why ethics is important. Why? Remember, he was telling you things. She was telling you things. So now you're not going to represent him. You're now representing her. What are you going to do with all the things that he confided to you about? I know you're going to say, but Miss D, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. So that's not my ethical responsibility. But what if your business walks like a duck, quacks like a duck? It is a duck. So therefore, you ought to conduct yourself ethically. That way, he doesn't feel horrible because he told you all these private things and now she's telling you things. That is the ethical dilemma. So ethics is super important when it comes to representing individuals. Again, it's doing the right thing when no one is listening. And in the academy, in the Immigration Law Academy, we stress ethics. We stress your ethical responsibility. If a client tells me something, I can't go repeat it. I can't tell one partner what the other partner says. I can't even tell you what the client has told me, even if you refer the client to me. You got to zip it. So ethical responsibility, that is a must. And we really push that inside of the academy. So what is the difference between an accredited representative and a consultant? Here's a short answer. One of you is riding dirty and the other isn't. Meaning my accredited representative have taken the steps. They have compliance at the top of their game. They have education at the top of their game. They have alignment at the top of their game. So they may have been a consultant in the beginning, but now they've said, look, I want to be in full compliance, right? So they've taken the time out. They've gone to school. They've taken a program. They've completed comprehensive knowledge of immigration law. They've learned some things. And now they are doing what it takes to be in compliance. Whereas for my consultants, they don't have clear legal authority. They can't represent. They cannot go into court. They cannot walk into USCIS. It's just a different level of doing exactly what attorneys are doing without having gone to law school or without having a law license. So that's a clear difference there's a clear difference between an accredited representative and an immigration consultant. All right, let's go into series 3, heart-centered leadership. All right. I'm attorney Dionnie Wynter Funde, and I founded the Wynter Immigration Law Academy. So over the years, my experience have really taken me into education. I was the former director of one of the largest law schools in the United States. And so I oversaw the Juris Doctorate programs. So I worked a lot with aspiring lawyers, first year, second year, third year. I was responsible for writing the curriculum. I was responsible for testing. In addition, I always had an immigrant's heart and a heart of service. So while I'm doing this, I was building pro bono programs. Some of my most successful programs were out of Michigan, where I built up the pro bono initiative, and I focused on naturalization. That was my thing, naturalization, because I realized a lot of individuals were walking around with a green card in their pocket and they were not naturalized. So I would build these programs out of Michigan. One such program was recognized by the Mexican consulate because I was able to take individuals that never spoke English and got them naturalized because I taught the test. I taught them to the test, meaning when they went in to be interviewed, they would already know what the questions were. And so when I was at the State Bar of Michigan later on, the agency that regulated attorneys, I also noticed a lot of document preparers, notarios, they would call them. They would be preparing documents, but they were doing it all wrong. They were doing it wrong. They were sending it to the wrong address. They were overcharging. They were telling people to apply for VAWA when they were not eligible. They were telling people to apply for asylum when they know they were not eligible. So it became this system of fear. And a lot of times we would get these calls into the state bar. And I thought to myself, once I left higher ed, what can I do to solve this problem? And so I created the Wynter Immigration Law Academy. In the very initial phases of the academy, I was focusing on immigration lawyers. Like, let me show you how to build, scale, grow. That was my tagline: how to build, scale, grow this immigration business so you can work from anywhere, freedom. I was trying to add dignity back to the profession of being an immigration lawyer. And I remember one individual called me from Miami. Her name is Betty Constant. She called me from Miami and she was not an attorney. She still is not an attorney, but at the time, she said, you know what, Miss D, this is what I'm doing. I'd like to join your training class, your training program. At that time, we had the incubator. I think it was like a 6-week program. I want to join your incubator because I want to learn. And I was like, but you're not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. And she joined, and lo and behold, she was just sharp at it. She was committed. She was dedicated. She wanted to serve her community. And so from then on, I made the shift. I literally made the shift. I said, you know what? I am going to focus on non-attorneys. And not only am I going to focus on non-attorneys, I'm going to bring them out of the shadows. So through the Wynter Immigration Law Academy, we're taking non-attorneys from the shadows. We're taking non-attorneys from non-compliance. And we're saying, hey, get the training, get the recognition, and go serve your community. So that was my passion behind the Wynter Immigration Law Academy. It's a bridge between non-attorneys and the legal profession. However, we focus on compliance, we focus on ethics, and we focus on service. So ethics, service. My foundation story. Why did I start an immigration law academy? Especially when I knew the bumps ahead, especially when I knew the challenges that I would potentially face working with non-immigrants. All right. So I am attorney Dionnie Wynter Funde. And before I became a lawyer, I wanted to be a chef. Of course, that's not the story. But in any event, I started out my career, my legal career, as a director of one of the largest law schools in the country. So I was director of their Juris Doctorate program. In that, I oversaw curriculum, I oversaw hiring of professors, I oversaw testing, I oversaw getting the campus accredited through the American Bar Association. So it was, it was a very high-powered job. Prior to that, I also worked at the State Bar of Michigan, where I regulated attorneys. At the time, the State Bar of Michigan, we oversaw about 38,000 attorneys. And one of the things I did was I was over the CJI, which oversaw the pro bono initiative. And I was very intrigued or very bothered sometimes by the amount of people that would call into like the Client Protection Fund because they were either ripped off by document preparers or so-called notarios. They were either ripped off or somebody did their paperwork wrong. I'm like, what is happening? And so by the time I left higher ed, I got fired, but that's for another story, another day. But by the time all of that came together, and I started the academy, my whole focus was on working with attorneys. I wanted to kind of bring dignity for immigration law attorneys or practitioners to say, because immigration law attorneys, we were not recognized. Like we were considered like, oh, you couldn't find a job, so you're doing immigration law. It's now just lately that you see a lot of people really getting into the field of immigration law. But I digress. So when I started the academy, I really wanted to focus on attorneys, bringing dignity to the profession, work from anywhere. My tagline was build, grow, scale, build. The whole idea was that you can make a profitable immigration business. You really could by serving your community ethically. And so we had one young woman from Miami who called me, emailed me, or texted me. I forgot. She reached out to me and she said, I want to join your program. At that time, we had the 6-week incubator program. She says, you know what, Miss D, I want to join your program. I'm like, but you're not an attorney. My nose is up. I'm like, you're not an attorney. Why do you want to join this program? And long story short, we took her into the program and she did amazing. She's since gone on to become an accredited representative herself, serves her community out of Miami, and just continues to do this amazing, amazing job. And then it clicked for me. I'm going to serve non-attorneys. And I knew the bar was not going to be happy with me. I said, I'm going to serve non-attorneys. I'm going to go after the non-attorneys that are out there filling out forms, that are out there messing up these forms. I'm going to go after them and I'm going to give them the training so they can work ethically, they can continue to serve, and they can also be compliant. So that was the gist of the academy, or that continues to be the gist of the academy. But my true passion is working with immigrant women or men, because I remember the story of my mom out of New York City. My mom came to New York as an immigrant. She would walk dogs. She cleaned houses. My mom did not even have a high school education, but she was just such a gangster. I like to say she's our original legal rebel. And she went into New York City, found herself an amazing attorney, Mr. Mark and Fish, and he was able to assist her in bringing all of us here like little ducklings, me and my siblings, like little ducklings. And he did so legally, right? So I came into the country legally. And so I understand the role that immigrant women can play in their communities. They can go find that information and then they can go back and share it. They can go back and inform. They can go back and translate. They can go back and educate. So that was my goal, or that continues to be the goal of the Immigration Law Academy, an academy born on service, where we understand that we as immigrant women can be the change makers in the community. I think a lot of people that I come across question, can I do this? Here's my message to you. You belong in advocacy even if people told you that you don't. There's so many gatekeepers that try to decide who is going to advocate for the immigrant community and who shouldn't. First of all, we have people profiting off the immigrant community that don't even belong to the immigrant community, or don't even believe in the immigrant community. So I think you as an immigrant, you can be an advocate even if someone tells you that you don't belong. I'm speaking to women, I'm speaking to men, I'm speaking to first generation, I'm speaking to you if you've opened up that nonprofit and you're wondering what to do with it. Go serve. There's over 13 million undocumented individuals inside of the United States. The current administration had said they're deporting all of them. How about if you go understand the law? How about if you go learn what you can do to help your community and go back and advocate? You can be an advocate, even if somebody says you're not. Immigration work is sacred. It is life changing. It is sacred. Remember, you're changing lives. If my mother had not migrated from Jamaica, I don't know what would have happened to my life. I was a mom at 15. I don't know what I would be doing now in Jamaica. And I don't want to think the worst of it, but I cannot imagine what my life would have been if my mom hadn't taken that step and then did the right thing and then brought me across and then helped me to go to law school. I don't know where my life would be. So immigration work is absolutely sacred. I know because I've seen how lives change when somebody's able to go from undocumented to documented. Lives change. Their children are born in safety. My son was born in the United States. Now he serves in the United States Army. Lives change. So immigration work is absolutely sacred. So when you can assist a family who didn't even realize that the child who turned 21 can petition for them, when you can be able to say to that mom, do you know that Junior can now petition for you because he's 21 and he was born here? That is life changing. Now mom can come out of the shadows. because now she has access to information and she has access to somebody who is trained, who understands the importance, who's not going to take her money and run off, who's not going to take the money and not do the work. So is immigration work sacred? You best believe that is it. Immigration work is sacred. If you've ever helped someone fill out a form, or if you've ever said, let me go with you to immigration and interpret or translate for you. If you formed a nonprofit and you said, you know what, I want to help my community. If you've ever given anybody direction on the train in your language, you've said, take this train to there. This is meant for you. If you filled out a form, you've taken a pen, you've sat at the kitchen table and you've asked them, ¿Cómo se llama? ¿Dónde vive? ¿De dónde eres? What is your name? Where do you live? Where are you from? If you've done that, this is meant for you.